Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video we got another Power Rankings video. Week 16 of the Power Rankings series has seen a couple of movements, including the honorable mentions, the first time honorable mention team, and a couple of changes in the top 10 that sees a new team in the top 10. We'll go to all of that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Internet Hockey channel. And before beginning this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you all for your support. We're never too love you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below and don't forget to comment down in the comment section below so something I'll discuss in today's video. So in today's video, we got a couple of things to talk about here. Like as usual, we got a Power Rankings video. Week 16 of the NHL has seen a couple of shipments in the honorable mentions and the top 10. So we'll get to all of the changes that have happened here. We're going to start usually by starting with our 4 honorable mentions. And for the first time this season, there's a new team that's even reached the honorable mention status, and that is the New York Islanders. The Islanders last week were fantastic. They went 3-1-0. They continued on with their torrid win streak last week by beating the Colorado Avalanche to begin the week. Then they shut out the Philadelphia Flyers. Then they survived and won in overtime over Tampa Bay before they had a bad loss in the second half of back-to-back to Florida. So 3-1-0, 6 out of possible 8 points, and back in the playoff race now, the 24-20-7 record. The Islanders are heating up right now. They were on a 7-game win streak before it ended against Florida, and they're looking really good. Like, they've gotten themselves back into, I think, 3 or 4 points out of a playoff spot. That stretch has been really good for them, and because they won 3 games last week, I'm putting them in honorable mentions for the first time this year. So really good week there from the Islanders offensively. Horvat, Barzal before he got injured, Pajot, Cyplikov, Nelson, all looking good offensively. Defensively, even without Dobson, Pelech, newly acquired D'Angelo, Romanov, all looking really good defensively in the net. Both Sorokin and Skarek have been looking pretty good in net with some of their other goaltenders injured. So all in all, really good week from the Islanders, and I put them as my 4th honorable mention. My 3rd honorable mention is a team who dropped some first honorable mention last week, and for the first time in a while, I've dropped them in a couple of spots, and that is the Los Angeles Kings. The Kings went 1-2-0 last week. They started out the week by losing back-to-back games, getting shut out in both of them to the Florida teams. Lost to Florida first, then to Tampa, 3-0 in both games, before they wound up beating the Carolina Hurricanes 4-2 on Saturday to finish out the week. So ended the week off on a positive note, which is good news for LA to finally hit 60 points. But before that, they were on a 4-game losing streak, I think. They've lost like 7 of 9 before that. So they were hurting a whole bunch, which is why I've dropped them from first honorable mention to 3rd honorable mention. Now, this team is still good. They're still 3rd in the Pacific. Offensively, Fiala, Byfield, Kopitar, Deneau, Laferriere, all looking really good offensively. Defensively, they've looked all right this week. Defensively, Doughty's returned now, and along with Anderson and Edmondson looking really good defensively. And in net, Kemper and Riddick are still looking pretty good. So all in all, this team's still decent, and they're still holding it down top 3 spot in the Pacific. So I'm not going to bump them down too much, but they had a 4-game losing streak before they ended on Saturday. So because of that, I'm dropping them to my 3rd honorable mention. My 2nd honorable mention is a team who actually rises from last week and has gotten themselves into a playoff spot, and that's the Detroit Red Wings. Red Wings had a very fantastic week last week, going 3-0-0. They started out the week with a shootout win over the Edmonton Oilers. Then they took down the Calgary Flames, and they continued on with their road trip with an overtime victory over the Vancouver Canucks. So 3 out of a possible 3 wins going through Western Canada is not half bad for the Red Wings. Like, offensively, they're looking really good. They've gotten themselves up to 27-21-5 record and in the first wildcard position. So the Red Wings are heating up. They're looking really good, and they've gotten themselves back into a playoff spot. Like, offensively, Larkin, Raymond, Kane, Comfer, DeBrincat, all looking really good offensively. Defensively, Sider, Sherratt, Petrie looking pretty good defensively, keeping those teams to 2 goals or under in those last 3 games. And in net, Talbot and Lyon still looking very fantastic. So all in all, a solid, complete effort there from the Detroit Red Wings this week, and I bumped them up to my 2nd honorable mention. And my 1st honorable mention is a team who falls out of the top 10 power rankings, and that is the New Jersey Devils. Devils last week went 1-1-0, so not overly bad week from the Devils. Started out with a dominant 5-0 shutout victory over the Flyers in the second half of a home-and-home, before the end of the week with a 4-3 loss to Buffalo Sabres. So not a bad week there from New Jersey, and still a top 3 team in the Metro Division, but because of some of the other teams that had really good weeks last week, I bumped them out of their top 10. Not going to be hard for them to get back into the top 10. They're still a very fantastic team. Offensively, Palat, Meyer, Hughes, Holla, Bratt, all looking good offensively. Defensively, Hamilton, Siegenthaler, Luke Hughes, all looking good defensively in the net. Allen and Dawes have been looking pretty good with Markstrom out. So this team's still really good, and I do like where they're heading right now. It's just because of a couple of other teams. I do drop them for the first time in a very long period of time to my honorable mention slot, honorable mention number 1. So that's where I put the Devils right now. So those are my honorable mentions for a current point in time. Next, going over to my top 10 power rankings. So to make their first ever debut in our top 10 power rankings at the 10th spot, we have one of my favorite teams in the Ottawa Senators. Ottawa had another really great week last week, going 3-0-0. They started out the week with an overtime victory over Washington, blew a couple of leads but got the W, then destroyed the Minnesota Wild 6-0 before they took down the Nashville Predators yesterday 5-2. So a really good win there from Ottawa, going 3 out of a possible 3 wins, being one of the top teams in the East and Western Conference in Minnesota and Washington. So a really fantastic week there from Ottawa, who are now 29-20-4 and third in the Atlantic Division at 62 points. So because of that and the way they've been heating up over the past little while, I'm putting them as my top 10 team. You may say it's because of biases, but no, Ottawa is a really legit contender right now, and I decided to put them into the top 10. Like offensively, the team's clicking now. Batherson, Stützle, Tkachuk, Giroux, Norris, all looking good offensively. Defensively, Shabbat, Sanderson, Jensen, all looking good defensively. And in net, both Forth, Riga, Maryland have been looking really good, with Allmark now on the brink of coming back. So a really good week there for the Senators, getting 3 out of a possible 3 wins, 6 out of a possible 6 points, getting to third in the Atlantic Division, and I had them as my 10th team in my power rankings. The number 9 team in my power rankings is a team who had another decent week this week, but I do drop them a little bit in the power rankings, and that's the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think they were 7th or 8th last week. They went 1-1-0 this week, so I dropped them down to 9th. They had a decent week, started the week out with a narrow loss, 3-1 to Minnesota, before the end of the week with a 4-3 victory over the red-hot Edmonton Oilers. So a pretty good week there for the Leafs, going 1-1-0, splitting the 2 games they had this week against 2 really good Western Conference teams. So like the Leafs are looking pretty good still offensively. Matthews, Marner, Nyes, Tavares, Robertson, all looking good offensively. Defensively, Riley, McCabe, Oliver Ekman Larson are looking really good defensively. And net, Wool and Hildeby have been looking pretty good on net. So this team's still really good, and they're still putting up some really good numbers. I mean, they beat Edmonton, so really good win from them. But like I said, they only went 1-1-0 this past week. There were better teams this week, so that's why I dropped them to 9th in my power rankings. At the 8th spot in my power rankings is the team who did not have a win this week, and that is the Vegas Golden Knights. Knights, who just a couple of weeks ago were in the top 5, are now 8th on my list because of a bad week, as they went 0-1-2 and fell to a 31-16-6 record. Bad stuff there for Vegas. Started the week out with overtime loss to Dallas, then had an overtime loss to Columbus, and then had a lead but blew it and lost in regulation to the Rangers. So wasn't an overly great week. They keep on giving up goals at inopportune times, so really need to fix that and really need to buckle down defensively and score a couple more goals. But still, this team's tied for top spot in the Pacific Division. They're a really good team offensively. Hurdle, Carlson, Eichel, Stone, Barbashev, all looking really good offensively. Defensively, McNabb, Pietrangelo, Theodore looking pretty good defensively. And in net, Hill and Samsonov have both been doing all right. So this Knights team is not fantastic. Need to score a couple more goals. Need to buckle down defensively. They do need to improve a little bit, but still, this team is one of the top teams in the Pacific Division, so I keep them at my 8th spot in my power rankings. At the 7th spot in my power rankings is a team who was on fire last week, and that is the Florida Panthers. This week, the Panthers had a fantastic 3-0-0 record. They started out the week with a 3-0 shutout victory over Los Angeles. Then they were able to beat the Chicago Blackhawks before they doubled up the New York Islanders. So Panthers had a fantastic week this week. They're back to top spot in the Atlantic Division, leapfrogging Toronto. So I'm going to bump them up a couple spots. I think they were 10th last week, so up to 7th now, which is really good for Florida. Like I said, they're to a 32-19-3 record offensively. Team's clicking. Barkov, Tkachuk, Reinhart, Boqvist, Lundell, all looking good offensively. Defensively, Forsling, Ekblad, Mikula, all looking good defensively. And the net, Bobrovsky and Knight have still been giving themselves some pretty solid goaltending performances, including Bobrovsky giving them a shutout. So all in all, a really good week there from the Panthers, winning all 3 games they played, getting back up to first in the Atlantic. I had the 7th in my power rankings. The 6th team in my power rankings is the Edmonton Oilers. They did not have an overly great week last week. They went 0-1-1. They lost in a shootout to the Detroit Red Wings to begin the week before they wound up losing to the Toronto Maple Leafs on the weekend in regulation. So it wasn't an overly great week. You want to see them come away with a win over Toronto or Detroit. They lost both, they had 1 goal. So a really bad loss there for the Oilers to lose both those games. But they're still top spot in the Pacific Division, tied with Vegas right now. Still have a record of 32-16-4. So like I said, this team's still pretty good, and they're still really lethal team, like offensively, even though they didn't get the results they wanted to. McDavid, McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent-Hopkins, Skinner, Arvidsson, all looking good offensively. Defensively could be a little bit better, but still Bouchard, Ekholm, Emberson, all looking good defensively. In the net, both Skinner and Picard have given themselves some pretty solid goaltending. So team's still pretty solid and they're still looking really good, but a bad week from Edmonton last week has them dropping to number 6 in my power rankings. The 5th team in my power rankings this week is the Minnesota Wild. Now the Minnesota Wild jump up, I think, 1 spot from last week because they had a pretty good week last week. They went 2-1-0. They started out the week with a narrow victory over the Toronto Maple Leafs 3-1. Then they shut out the Montreal Canadiens 4-0 before the ending their East Canadian road trip with a bad loss 6-0 to Ottawa. So it wasn't an overly great end to the week, but a solid start to the week by beating Toronto, Montreal. Got a couple of wins, kept themselves in the race for second or first spot in the Central Division. So that was really good there for Minnesota, still keeping pace with Dallas for second spot in the Central. So it wasn't a fantastic week. You want to see them do a lot better against Ottawa. Got completely outshot and outplayed, but still, they had a couple of better weeks earlier on in the week. So going 2-0, I like what they saw offensively. Johansson, Boldy, Eric Snack, Goudreau, Foligno, all looking good offensively. Defensively, Faber, Spurgeon, Brodin, all looking good defensively. And in net, both Gustafsson and Fleury gave themselves some pretty solid goaltending, especially Fleury in a shutout against Montreal. So all in all, a pretty good week there for Minnesota, and I had them as my 5th team in my power rankings. The 4th team in my power rankings is their Central Division rivals, and that is the Dallas Stars. The Stars started off the week by beating the Vegas Golden Knights 4-3 in overtime. Then they beat the Vancouver Canucks 5-3 before ending the week with a come from behind victory over the Jackets 5-3. So 3 of a possible 3 wins, 6 out of possible 6 points. Stars were perfect last week. They kept the second spot in the Central Division under wraps, so really good stuff there for Dallas to keep the second spot in the Central but away from the Minnesota Wild. And honestly, this team's looking pretty good. Offensively, new acquisition Mikael Granlund's looking really good on the offensive side, along with guys like Robertson, Stankoven, Hintz, and Johnston, all looking good offensively. Defensively, CC, who's now been acquired by Dallas as well, looking really good on that defensive line with guys like Lindell and Dumba. And on net, both Andre and the Smiths have given themselves some pretty solid goaltending. So all in all, a pretty good week from the Dallas Stars. And I have them as my 4th team in my power rankings. The 3rd team in my power rankings is another team who had a really good week last week, and that is the Carolina Hurricanes. The Hurricanes started out the week with a 4-0 shutout victory over the New York Rangers, then narrowly beat the Blackhawks 3-2 in the game that Mikko Rantanen scores first as a member of the Carolina Hurricanes. And then the Carolina Hurricanes lost to the Kings on the weekend 2-4. So it wasn't a really great end to the weekend, but once again, a couple of really good starts at the very start of the week, beating the Rangers, beating the Hawks. Not overly difficult teams, but still to get a couple of wins was really good, and still to get 4 of a possible 6 points, it's not overly bad for the Hurricanes. So I gotta say they had a really good week, going 2-0, keeping ahead for second spot in the Metro Division. So like I said, offensively, this team's clicking. Svechnikov, Rantanen, Aho, Jarvis, Martinuk, all looking good offensively. Defensively, Slavin, Burns, and Chatfield looking pretty good defensively. In the net, Anderson and Kochekov have been getting themselves some pretty solid goaltending. So all in all, a pretty good week there from the Hurricanes as they remain second in the Metro Division. And I keep them as my 3rd team in my power rankings this week. The second team in my power rankings is the team who's been first in my power rankings for a long period of time, but they dropped them from the first spot. And that is the Washington Capitals. The Capitals started out the week really well with a win over the Calgary Flames before they had a couple of OT losses, one to Ottawa and one to Winnipeg. So 4 of a possible 6 points is not overly bad. Did lose a couple of games, but there was one team who was better than them last week and has been better for a couple of weeks now. So that's why I bumped Washington out of the top spot. But still, second spot's not overly bad. There's still only one of 2 teams to have reached a 70-point plateau this year and still a point in all 3 games last week. So honestly, Capitals are now 34-11-7. They're not looking overly bad. Offensively, Ovechkin, Mangiapane, Strome, Dubois, Protest looking really good offensively. Defensively, Chychrun, Carlson, Trevor Van Riemsdyk, pretty good defensively this week. And in net, Thompson, Lindgren continue to give the Capitals great goaltending, even though they were a little bit shaky this week. So all in all, still a really good week there from the Capitals, getting 4 possible 6 points. And I do drop them to second spot in my power rankings. And the new number 1 team in my power rankings this week is the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets had a fantastic week last week, going 3-0-0. The Winnipeg Jets started out the week with a very impressive come-from-behind victory over Montreal. Then they destroyed the Boston Bruins 6-2 before they wound up ending the week with an impressive 5-4 overtime victory over the team we just talked about in the Washington Capitals. So Jets won the battle of behemoths between the 2 best teams in the conferences, in the Jets and the Capitals. Jets have won 3 straight. I think they've won like 7 straight now, won all 3 games last week. So I have to put them as my number 1 team again this week. Like offensively, team's clicking clicking. Shifley, Velarde, Appleton, Niederreiter, Connor looking really good offensively. Defensively, Melo, Pionk, Morrissey looking pretty good defensively, and in net, Hellebuck and Comrie have been giving them some amazing goaltending. So all in all, a really good week there from the Jets. 3 out of a possible 3 wins. And I had them as my #1 team in my power rankings, bumping out the Washington Capitals, definitely. That's all I'm talking for today. Those are my power rankings. Just to mention, there was only one team I swapped in and out this week in my power rankings, and that was the 2 New York teams. The Islanders, who were 4th honorable mention this week, are in, while the Rangers, who were 2nd honorable mention last week, are out. So that was the only change up we made for the power rankings this week. But just to recap, here are my top 10 power rankings for this week. At 10th spot is the Ottawa Senators, 9th spot is the Toronto Maple Leafs, 8th spot is the Vegas Golden Knights, 7th spot is the Florida Panthers, 6th spot is the Edmonton Oilers, 5th spot is the Minnesota Wild, 4th spot is the Dallas Stars, 3rd spot is the Carolina Hurricanes, 2nd spot, again bumped out, 1st spot is the Washington Capitals, and the new #1 team for this week in the power rankings is the Winnipeg Jets. So after your thoughts on all of this, down in the comment section below, did they put anyone too high? Did they put anyone too low? And for your opinion, who would you have in your top 10 power rankings for week 16 of the NHL? Definitely let your guys' thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk about for today. I want to like this video. If you're interested, subscribe below. Think about your support when I do with all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment down in the comment section below so you can all access today's video. Also a blog to make news, rumors, analysis. If that's where check that out. The link down in the description below. And I can see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.